Are you missing your shots? Like this?
What the fuck, dude? This guy, I can't fucking hit this guy. Hit that guy.
Are you losing your mind? Like that? Well, in this guide, I have the solution, and I'm gonna help you start carrying everyone like you were meant to. I'm Psykho, professional Apex Legends coach with over 4 years worth of experience competing at the highest levels of Apex, and I'm here to help you take control of your aim once and for all. To get us rolling, I'm gonna start off with monitor alignment. Sounds super simple, dumb, and maybe basic to some of you, but no matter your input, equipment, or your level of experience, this tip may be useful for you. A good rule of thumb to do this is to keep the center of your screen in line with your eyes and the top of your head with the top of your monitor. Now that your setup is optimized the right way in terms of your monitor, let's quickly explain how the guide is going to be laid out. This guide is for both mouse and keyboard and controller players. However, I strongly encourage you to learn both inputs and to stay for both. Many pros decide to dabble in each input because it deepens understanding of how aiming mechanics and principles can work. Then we're going to be going into aiming principles and gunplay fundamentals. These concepts are universal, no matter the input, and can make or break performance regardless of said input. And finally, I'm going to give you drills and tips to practice these skills effectively, whether that's in R5 Reloaded or the firing range. This is where the magic happens, guys, and you're going to start to see a real improvement in your aim. Make sure you comment below, like the video, and subscribe. With that roadmap in mind, let's kick things off with mouse and keyboard. When it comes down to MNK, there's a few key components to focus on: DPI, in-game sensitivity, eDPI, CM360, and freehanding. Dots per inch, or DPI, is all about your mouse's sensor and how it tracks movement. Most Apex pros stick between 400 and 1600 DPI for their mice. Your mouse's sensor is taking thousands of screenshots on your mouse pad or whatever surface that you have your mouse on. You're either asking it with a lower DPI to take less photos, or you're asking for it with a higher DPI to take more. As it takes more on something like 1600 DPI, you're getting more speed out of your cursor. If you choose something like 400 and you're asking it to do less, your precision and your cursor is going to be much slower. Now, the choice of DPI is up to the player, and it is completely preferential. But the big key thing to note is that 1600 DPI, when it comes down to the response time of a mouse, tends to be better, versus a 400 tends to be less better. That's why a lot of these pros pick between the two sensitivities, most commonly 800. As for the in-game sensitivity part, the in-game sensitivity acts as a multiplier to your DPI. And when it's combined, you get an effective DPI. So for example, if your DPI is 800 and your in-game sensitivity is 1, you get a 800 eDPI. 800 DPI multiplied by 2 then, by default, is equivalent to 1600 DPI. Well, why the hell is that important? Well, the whole thing is, when you have these types of DPIs and you have these types of sensitivities, when you want to compare it to other pros or to your fellow MNK players, doing eDPI can be a formula of telling you who's slower and who's faster. Now let's talk about what I would argue is the most important part about this. How do you find your sensitivity on mouse and keyboard? Well, there's two ways that people find their sensitivity. To find them, you're likely using two of the one methods. Likely, you're freehanding. So this is all about the feel it out type of approach. You plop your mouse on a mouse pad, you move around, you select a random DPI, you select a random sensitivity, and you're just feeling it out. And you're just trying to think, okay, well, what's right? Where is my character gonna go when I'm moving my mouse around? As for the opposite, it's a bit more organized, referring to CM360 here. CM360 measures the amount of distance your mouse has to travel from one side of the pad to the other to create a 360 turn inside of the game. It's very precise, it's very good for dialing in a sensitivity, and this is how you essentially do it. We can go in the firing range, we can face the middle dummy here, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick up our mouse, we're gonna put it on one side, and then we're gonna move it from that one side of the pad to the other side, and adjust the sensitivity accordingly. Because there's gonna be times where you're maybe gonna overshoot because the sensitivity is too high, and there's times where you're gonna undershoot because the sensitivity is too low. Understanding which one is important and then dialing in the sensitivity from there can help you get something more consistent, and you're gonna be relying upon your mouse pad to develop muscle memory in a more organized way, because you can feel out the end from one point to the other versus just picking a random set of numbers. Now, if you're playing controller, finding the right setup is a little different than that of MNK. You're not tweaking something like CM360, and there is really no freehanding. Your focus will be on the sensitivity settings themselves, the response curves, and everything in between. To simplify this for you, I've grouped together 3 of the best controller sensitivity setups, so that way you can make an educated choice and start off strong from a good foundation. Make sure you like the video if you haven't already. Let's dive into controller. To kick it off, we have 4-3 linear, which is a very popular choice among pro players. In order to set that up, you're gonna need to pick a look sensitivity of 4, like this, and an ADS sensitivity of 3. You would then also need to set your response curve to linear, like so. By default, some of you might be using classic as a response curve. 3-3 classic tends to be what is default when you load up Apex for the first time. But many pro players and many great aimers have chosen to pick linear. As they learned over time, it just simply gives you the best control. Our second option is way less known, but for those of you who want more customization without doing anything crazy, ALC per optic bleed through might be for you. This is because you're allowed to pick more than just whole numbers, such as 4-3. Instead, it will let you have something like 4 on a look sensitivity and 3.5 on an ADS sensitivity, or a 5 and a 4.5. In order to do this, you will need to set your ADS to 1. And we're gonna add tweaks by going into ALC, going under per optics, and adjusting these settings here to our desired number. Then we're going to back out of the decimals and out of the ADS per optics settings, and we're going to turn ALC off. Now, the per optics, they're still on, and they will bleed through into your normal settings. But it's important to have your sensitivity like this at 1 for your ADS in order for the bleed through to work, and in order for the multiplier to work and make sense, because we're just multiplying 1 by whatever you put in to your ALC per optics. But this right here can give you a lot more to be offered than just a normal set of whole numbers for ADS, or a normal set of whole numbers for something like normal per optics. It's just gonna give you that fine-tuned control in between the whole numbers, so that way you can get where you wanna go. As for the last option, we have advanced look controls, or ALC for short, which allows you to do literally everything, from ADS speed to response curve and much more. I won't go into detail about how to set this up, but there's plenty of information out there about it. If you're trying to shoot straight though in the first place, I wouldn't worry about this one, but I would come back to it when you're more confident in your aim in general. Since you've gotten your input locked in, your monitor aligned, and the sensitivities all corrected, let's go over some of those universal aiming principles and gunplay mechanics I talked about earlier in the video. I'm going to be breaking down each topic like normal, so we're going to be on the same page, and I'm also going to show you specific drills to practice. I'll also be covering these drills in R5, but you can also find the link in the description for it if you don't have it already, and for those of you not wanting to install R5 or unable to, I'm also going to be using a firing range variant that you can follow along with. One of the most crucial things in Apex is tracking. Tracking is all about keeping your crosshair steady on a moving target, which is going to be crucial in Apex where literally everything moves super fast and people are doing tons of movement tech around you. You're constantly going to be going up against enemies that strafe, slide, and dodge, so it is essential to stay on target when people are moving around. For R5, the running targets drill has multiple moving targets. They cross the road, they cross railings, they go all over the place, up hills. You want to use 2 ARs and practice keeping your crosshair on these moving targets and landing shots effectively. As for the firing range, we have 3 different squares located in the firing range, mostly on the right side of the range. And these square moving targets, you want to basically use the same ARs that you would likely use in an R5 drill, like a flatline or a nemesis, and you want to follow these targets along using your AR and make sure that you're scoring shots effectively. Don't worry if it's not perfect at the start. This is why we practice. This is why this is a drill. This is why we do this. Secondary to tracking, we have flicking, which is the ability to snap to a target quickly. This skill is very useful, especially in these close range engagements that are going to take place in Apex. We live in a meta where literally everybody runs into bubbles with shotguns again. So, guns like the PK and the Wingman are extremely crucial. A lot of players struggle with flicking though because it requires a lot of muscle memory, but it's something that you can definitely improve with practice. In R5, in order to help your flicking, I recommend a drill called Tile Frenzy, which you have square targets appearing in random spots on a wall. You can use a Wingman or a PK and flick to each new target that pops up. For the firing range, folks, we're gonna do what I call the 1-4-2-3 dummy drill. We're gonna stand in the middle of the range. We're going to flick between targets in set order, 1 to 4, before emptying your clip into the dummy, reloading, repeating, and aiming to take down the dummy by the end as many times as you can. Often overlooked, we have ADS strafing speeds. This refers to how fast or how slow your movement becomes when aiming down sights with different types of weapons. Each weapon has a certain type to it, whether it's an SMG, a shotgun, or an AR. Every type of weapon has a unique ADS speed that will impact your Legend's ability to strafe and stay mobile. Knowing this difference can help you decide what weapon to use and why, when to hip fire versus when to ADS, and so on and so forth. In R5, the best drill for this is called the Fast Close Strafes. It has an entire set of close range targets that strafe very quickly, helping you decide when to hip fire or scope in and use weapons like the Volt and the Flatline in terms of making sure that you're doing the right thing at the right time. In the range, though, if that's where you're at, I would suggest using the Volt and the Flatline like you would in R5, but instead, we're gonna use the dummies, and we're gonna turn them on to running speed with random strafing, and practice different distances to see when to hip fire, when to ADS to recenter, or when to aim down sights in general. The goal is to do as much damage as possible without taking so much in return and killing your target as quickly as you can. Then we have Hitscan. In games with Hitscan, bullets hit instantly wherever you aim, with no travel time involved with the projectile, which is your bullet. But in Apex, weapons are all non-Hitscan, meaning that bullets will take time to travel and reach their target. So you need to land your shots by firing slightly ahead of the moving target. To practice this in R5, we're gonna do what is called the sky diving targets drill, where targets fall from the sky as if they're diving off the rip or going in a Valkalt, and you're gonna need to shoot ahead of them. ARs work best here. Ideally put a scope on them as well. And if you're going to be doing this in the firing range, grab one of those friends of yours that keep complaining about how your aim is atrocious or how bad you are, and have them play Pathfinder. Have them use a zipline to go back and forth, and you can shoot them while they're doing so. So that way you can replicate the same thing in terms of shooting ahead and being able to hit a target. Lastly, we have Recoil Control. Every weapon has its own recoil pattern in Apex Legends. Some are more unique than others. Some you gotta simply pull down for, others you're gonna have to pace your shots a lot more. At the end of the day, having these adjustments and understanding how they go will help you master recoil for each weapon with significant improvement towards your accuracy because of that. This is just one that's easier to do in the range. We want to basically go into our settings while we're there. We want to make sure impact marks are on high and that they are on, and we want to fire a few rounds into the wall without controlling any type of recoil just to see the pattern. After we repeat this a few times, we want to make sure that we understand the pattern. Once we've got it, we're going to learn to strafe into the pattern. We're going to learn to solely control the pattern, and we're basically going to look at these marks as a way to guide ourselves through how do we make a small grouping or how do we control our recoil so that way our bullets end up in one area on the wall. By setting up these foundations that I've given you throughout the video, you can stick to a lot of these drills and stick to a lot of what I've told you, and it will consistently make you better and set you up for success. I know that for a fact. I've trained to do this for years. With that said, my Black Friday sale ends November 30th. Make sure you check out my Metafy page and book something there, or book something for your friend. Maybe as a holiday gift, but overall it generally supports the channel and makes more content like this able to be produced, so thank you very much for that. Besides that, I love doing this. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Feel free to check out any of my other videos listed here.